Welcome also, delighted to say, to a man who owns far too many medals, and he's wearing all of them today, and quite rightly and proudly. Philip Ingram, former senior military intelligence officer. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Great to see you again so soon. You were with us last Thursday, and it's great to have you in on a day like today, on Armistice Day. And obviously, at 11 o'clock, we will be marking the 2-minute silence, as Mike has been talking about. The Prime Minister will be in Paris, very unusually alongside President Macron. As I say, first time since a Prime Minister for this country, since Winston Churchill has done that. You are here with all of your medals as a former serving officer. You also have with you
my great-grandfather's medals, which
include Victoria Cross.
No, it's not Victoria Cross. It's got a medal issued during Victoria's time. It's a Queen's South African medal. No, if it's Victoria Cross, out of armed guards outside.
Oh, right. Oh, OK, right. That shows my utter ignorance, which is probably rather obvious to everybody else who knows their stuff on this stuff. Very briefly, talk us through those incredible medals on your chest that you're wearing very proudly.
Oh, crikey, you asked me this before. I'm trying to remember. Well, that's a member of the Order of the British Empire. That is the General Service Medal 1962 with clasp Northern Ireland. That is the UNPROFOR medal. I got that for in Croatia before even Bosnia happened with the United Nations. That is the NATO medal for operations into Bosnia, the NATO medal for operations into Kosovo, the NATO medal for operations into the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, as it was called then, now North Macedonia. That is the Iraq medal, and then that is the Queen's Golden Jubilee medal.
Can I just say, on behalf of everyone here at Talk and everyone listening, I'm sure as well, thank you for your service. Today, again, we had Remembrance Sunday yesterday, Armistice Day today. It's 80 years, since D-Day. We marked all that earlier in the year as well. It is still extraordinary how just in your blood this is for most of us to mark these days, these solemn occasions, and to give thanks to people. What do you make? And Mike's talking about this on his show this morning. The people who say, well, they won't wear a poppy, they don't mark this. This is somehow a sort of a celebration of war and death and blood loss, as opposed to, I imagine, how you see it, which is very differently.
Yeah, it's in no way the celebration of war and death. It's remembering those that have given people the freedom to have that choice. Whether
and to say it out loud, not get put in prison.
Exactly. And therefore it is commemorating the sacrifice that they have made, and that those who have died at their own hands because of the pressures of war that have made, and the sacrifices the families have made as well in all of this, so that it's brought the freedoms that we enjoy today. And it's not just about the First World War or the Second World War, but since the end of the Second World War there has only been 1 year whenever British service personnel were not involved in a conflict somewhere around the globe, and we hadn't lost people in the same numbers that we did in the First and Second World War, but we still lost quite a large percentage of people compared to those we deployed.
And on a day like this, when we're marking the fallen heroes, how in that context, when we've seen, we've got 2.5 years on war in Europe, we have men and women dying in the trenches in Ukraine after being invaded by Vladimir Putin's Russian forces. We've also seen at the weekend the most extraordinary sort of blatant pogrom on Jews in Amsterdam, supposedly one of the most liberal cities in Europe, where people set out, and the WhatsApp groups are really clear. People were blatantly posting it, and these were pro-Islamist people, basically deliberately targeting supporters of an Israeli football team playing in the city, attacking, beating them. No action taken at the time by the police. There were warnings about it. It feels like we're back in the 1930s. In lots of ways, lots of people are talking about that. And no, not in Donald Trump is elected and he's a fascist. These people are idiots. No, real fascism actually happening in Europe right now. What do you make of that?
Well, I think if we're comparing it to just before the Second World War, we're in a period of time between 1936 and 1938. There is global conflict coming, and I'm not saying that lightly. I have never seen clear paths, or a single clear path to global conflict before Russia's reinvasion of Ukraine. I can now see several clear paths, and nothing that's happening around the world, and it's not down to Trump being elected, it's not anything else. I've never seen, I don't see anything happening to try and diffuse the situation, and we're on this, it's like a train being pushed out of the railway station. Once it starts to move down the tracks, it's going to be very difficult to stop, and we're at that point at the moment. It's a very very, very worrying time.
It really is.
Yeah.
I'm amazed by how many people, and including an awful lot of politicians, who don't seem to get it.
Well, in 1936, 1938, the politicians didn't get it. We saw Neville Chamberlain coming down the steps of the aircraft, waving his piece of paper saying, "Peace in our time." It's exactly the same today.
Well, my question today is, I mean, look, obviously you're always welcome to get in touch about anything that we're talking about today. You have a habit of choosing what you want to get in touch about, which is why we love you. But I particularly want to hear about Donald Trump warning Vladimir Putin, we're told, in a phone call last week, not to escalate the war in Ukraine. Of course, this is amid fears that the US will cut back support for Kiev, or for some people, of course, amid hopes that the US will cut back support for Kiev. Now, we know that Keir Starmer, part of the meeting in Paris today, not just for Armistice Day, to mark that on the Champs-Élysées and lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier at the Arc de Triomphe alongside Emmanuel Macron, but also to have talks about, what does Trump's election mean for peace in Europe? What does it mean for our support for Ukraine? Big expectations that Donald Trump's presidency will lead to a demand for basically, you're not getting your weaponry, you're going to have to go to the negotiating table. I want to know, how should Britain respond if that is the case? And again, we don't know yet if that's what Donald Trump's going to do. What he says, what he does, often very different things. There's lots more pressure in the Republican Party for him to continue that support, an understanding of the realpolitik, long-term implications of allowing Putin to make that land grab, not just Crimea from 2014, but also the Donbass region as well, which is, by the way, the most industrialised, wealthy region of Ukraine. But also, I just want to know how we should respond in that context. What should Britain do? What should the West do? What do you want the US to do? How significant is this? Maybe you think, let's just get out of it. We don't care anymore. I think that's short term, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. How should Britain respond if Donald Trump does actually cut back support for Ukraine? You can text us on 87222. You can send a message on X at talkTV. And, of course, calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Philip Ingram, how should we respond?
I think we need to ensure Ukraine has quickly got the wherewithal that it needs, and make sure that we're continuing to work with Donald Trump and show him that if he does not continue to support Ukraine, the options that will come next are worse. Because I personally think that if Ukraine is forced to give up any territory for any form of peace, it might solve in the very short term what's going on inside Europe. But it is more likely to stimulate Xi Jinping in Southeast Asia saying, I only need to deal with the wrath of the West for 3 or 4 years if I take Taiwan. So he'll go for Taiwan.
And much easier to put economic sanctions on Russia. I mean, America didn't even have any trade deals at all with Russia. So very easy for them to do that. Can't do that with China.
No.
That will break the West.
And with the Southeast Asian pivot, if China decides to do that, then Japan might try and take their Kuril Island back that Russia's occupied since 1945. It's the best opportunity for them to do that. North Korea might turn around and say this is the best opportunity for us to try and reunite Korea, and would nuke Seoul. It's
the message that and he is a lunatic, the North Korean leader, so it's perfectly possible. It's the message it sends out about, it's worth it. This is my main issue with the West, is our unwillingness. And I say this as an armchair general, but our willingness to give anything up for the sake of an easier life today, not understanding that actually we probably lost more lives in the Second World War because of that urge to have an easier life in the 1930s, where actually standing up to Hitler before he'd got his war machine completely up and running was done. But also in a time when we're arguing over whether we should spend 2.3% or 2.5%, where we're going to hit that target of GDP on military. It's going to have to be higher than that. And the best way of avoiding war, and we know this, is to speak softly and carry a big stick, not to saber rattle, and then not have anything to back it up with. If the knowledge that you have the military might, that you have the willingness and the ability to go to war, is what prevents war.
There are two things that you need in military: capability and intent. Our intent to support Ukraine, our intent to police the rest of the world and stop global conflict is quite clear. We've got the political intent. We don't have the capability. And therefore that undermines any intent argument that our governments have, because people can see through it. It's called bluff. and we're bluffing. And
but
we have been for a long time.
I mean, Vladimir Putin, a lot of his military is bluffing. He's losing, we understand, something like 1,600 men a day being killed or injured on the front line of Ukraine to get an extra couple of yards of the Donbass region, eastern Ukraine. He's only able to do that because he's a dictator.
Exactly.
And because he hasn't got, the Russian media on the ground seeing this and sending it all back, and because the men who have been conscripted are either from, poorer regions in Russia, they're from, sort of satellite states, they're ex-con, they're prisoners and stuff, but allowed out of prison to go and fight. They're not the sort of the great and the good of Moscow and St. Petersburg, children, are they? And that wouldn't fly for us. Okay, he can get away with 40% of government spending now in Russia is now on the military. This is absolutely so damaging the Russian economy. We wouldn't be able to do that here, so we can't get away with that bluff.
And we're arguing over going up to 2.5%. If we go back to the Cold War and we have an Iron Curtain comes down across Europe again, which is one of the other things. The last Cold War, we were paying between 5, 6 and 7% of GDP on defence. If it then got into a major global conflict, then it's what's called total war. So our whole economy, 100% of our economy, is focused on trying to provide us the wherewithal in defence. 2.5 or 3% is cheap compared to that. Yeah,
absolutely. This sounds like a very trivial thing, and it is, of course, compared to the importance, people losing their lives, possibly more, and marking their deaths in the past. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has claimed that he was blocked from laying a wreath at the Cenotaph yesterday by the establishment. He's got 5 MPs, got a lot more votes than, say, the Green Party and the Lib Dems, who have more MPs. The Lib Dems got more MPs, certainly more than the Lib Dems, than the Green Party, apologies. But the leader of the DUP, who only have 5 MPs, but, biggest party in Northern Ireland, they were allowed to lay a wreath, List MP, Lib Dems and others. Along with the Green Party, Farage wasn't allowed to, because apparently you have to have 6 MPs to take part, and that's part of the ceremony, and they've only, he's only got 5 and she's only got 4. I mean, I don't know who came up with these rules, but I mean, is that a needless establishment snub? Does it matter?
I don't think it matters. Rules is rules, and you have to draw a line somewhere, and someone is going to complain. The last thing you should do is publicly then criticise it and make statements about it. You should go privately behind closed doors and just say, look, this is unfair, and then not turn it into something that then becomes politicised. Because it's a day of remembrance. Politics should be taken out of it.
It should be about that. OK, let's talk also, just before we go to a break, let's talk about COP29. Now, you remember when was it COP26? Who knows? A few years back, and Boris Johnson, they were hosting it in Edinburgh, and, oh, good God, it was non-stop on the telly, wasn't it? COP26, we were going to save the world. And what amazes me, these are the summits, Conference of Parties, UN Summit on climate change. These are the summits which are supposed to be about saving the planet, OK? And yet, each one, this is the one.
Yep.
29th one, it's not gone so well so far. Basically, they sign up to a protocol, it's all watered down. China and India play along and then just do exactly what they want, quite rightly. Western nations basically prostrate themselves, their economies and the third world poorest people on the ground before the god of green, frankly, poncing around on the world stage, which is what it is. I call it greenwashing, but it's poncing around on the world stage. They all fly there by private jet. They talk a load of abject nonsense. They want to carry on with their own lives, but make everyone else poorer, both in the Western world and in the third world. And the latest thing is, demands for trillions and trillions of pounds and dollars to basically pay the third world not to use fossil fuels because that's going to prevent them getting rich. It's almost like we're telling them that we know that fossil fuels are better. This at a time when, by the way, what a surprise. I mean, there hasn't been any sunshine for the last few days. We haven't wind hasn't been producing, and solar hasn't been producing pretty much anything by way of power for us. But Keir Starmer's going to be basically the only major world leader there. Chinese aren't there, Indians aren't there, America's not there, France not there, Germany not there. He still thinks this is a big deal. He is so wrong about everything. If Keir Starmer's there, good general rule, the day has passed.
Yeah, so out of touch. All the major emitters in the world are not represented there. So it can't affect anything. You can give $1 trillion to each of the small nations that's around the place, but that's not going to affect the emissions unless you're dealing with China, United States, India.
I don't want people to affect the emissions.
And everything else.
When we say major emitters, what we mean is major world economies.
Yeah, there are advantages in developing new technology. You don't have to label them as green technology, but if you haven't got the major economies there to sit down and negotiate with, it's a waste of time. Yes, you can do some good sideline meetings with some of the
Mostly there are going to be oil deals. By the way, Azerbaijan is a major oil producing nation, and good, because we rely on oil. It's part of the reason why everyone's wealthy now.
Maybe what he's doing,
most people.
Maybe what he's doing is because we're closing North Sea oil down, he's there to actually do a sideline oil deal and bring it in from Azerbaijan.
Yeah. It is absolutely extraordinary. It really is. It really is. Anyway, look, Keir Starmer and President Macron, by the way, at the Armistice Day commemorations in Paris right now, laying their wreaths. And we've got that footage on the screen if you're watching on our YouTube page. If you're not, do take a look at it. You can see that footage of them going to lay a joint wreath there in Paris. Don't forget, we'll be taking the 2-minute silence, of course, at 11 o'clock to pay our respects to those who have fallen, and indeed to those who like Philip, have served and are keeping our country safe. What I want to do is hear from you, because Donald Trump has warned that Vladimir Putin should not escalate the war in Ukraine. We are told there was a phone call. Kremlin's denying there was a phone call, but this is amid fears that US will cut back support for Kyiv. Maybe you're happy about the prospect of that. Should Zelensky just go to the table and negotiate and give up some of his territory for peace? Is that what you want? How should Britain respond? Should we up the ante? Should we put more into our military, spend more on GDP, give more help to Ukraine, or should we walk away from Ukraine as well?